Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, a film and TV podcast from Doof Media. My name is Scott Daly and I'm joined by my definitely not a sex doll co-host, Matt Freeman. How's it going today, Matt?
I'm doing good. Everybody can hear my voice, not just you.
This week on the show, it is time once again for our monthly series we're calling The Doof Canon. Matt, what is the Doof Canon all about?
Well, once a month, those individuals that donate to us on Patreon at the Council of Doof level will get to collectively decide on a movie for the community to consider for entrance into the canon. Scott and I and maybe some guests will meet to talk about the movie and then present our case for why it should or should not be admitted.
But as always, we leave that final decision up to you folks at home. So stick around, listen to our arguments, and then find a link in the show notes of this episode, which will send you over to our Patreon account, patreon.com/doofmedia. You will see a public vote there. You do not have to be a patron to vote, and you can choose whether or not this will be entered into the Doof Canon officially and formally. Matt, what has the council brought for us today?
This month, our council has nominated the 2007 Ryan Gosling film, Lars and the Real Girl.
My little brother is crazy, right? I mean, he's crazy.
If I may, he appears to have a delusion.
What the hell is he doing with a delusion? She loves kids. Fantastic. When will it be over?
When he doesn't need it anymore.
We gotta fix him. Can you fix him?
Bianca's in town for a reason. This isn't necessarily a bad thing.
How can we help?
Go along with it.
And the description of that movie is as follows. A delusional young man strikes up an unconventional relationship with a doll he finds on the internet.
This movie was written by Nancy Oliver, directed by Craig Gillespie, and stars Ryan Gosling, Emily Mortimer, and Paul Schneider, who you will probably most famously know as that guy that was on the first season of Parks and Rec, and then they wrote him out because his character wasn't working.
Uh-huh.
Matt, what did you think of Lars and the Real Girl? Had you seen this movie before?
Yes. I've always loved this movie. The thing about this movie is that it was a real hard sell to get me to watch it the first time.
Yeah.
Because it
fair.
Sounds so different from what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Like the premise of it, you're like, what is this, like a raunchy sex comedy? Because there's a sex doll, or is this like some kind of like weird dark, or is it just pure cringe humor? And it's this special, unique gem of just like sweetness and earnestness and poignancy and all these amazing story moments that just make you cry with happiness, and just like all these great characters and amazing performances. And if you haven't seen the movie and you're listening to this, first of all, I don't really think that listening to this conversation is really going to spoil anything, because it's just not that kind of movie.
Sure. But
I would recommend you watch it. It's a great movie. It's a great movie. What do you think?
Yeah. Honestly, right now, sitting here, having watched this movie just a few hours ago, not for the first time, but again, I feel like this is probably my favorite of the movies we've done for Doof Canon, which is a wild thing to say because we've done some absolutely incredible movies that I've loved to death. But I adore this movie. I love this movie so much, and revisiting it was a joy. I loved watching this movie today. I was completely riveted the entire time. I was loving it. I cried multiple times while watching this fucking movie. And this is a really interesting one for me because it is a little bit nostalgic for me in that, this movie came out in 2007. We were in college still. It's a really interesting thing happened to me in college. I think I've always been into movies, right? I've always been a movie person ever since I was pretty young, but like I hadn't really been exposed very much to the indie movie scene. And I had a roommate in college. This was after you and Michael abandoned me.
It's not quite how I remember it, but okay, go on.
It's not true. It's not true. What happened was I was trying to be an RA. They strung me along for months, and you two, well, I thought I was going to get it because I was like a finalist, and you two signed up to be roommates. And then I was an alternate and didn't have anywhere to live, and I
Yeah.
pitched a fit.
Yeah.
Anyway, ended up living with this guy Justin, and he for some reason that I still don't really understand. Not that he doesn't like movies, but he just like got obsessed with the idea of burning movies, and so he'd like go to Redbox and just rent anything.
Uh-huh.
Anything, and he'd bring it home and he'd rip it and he'd burn it, and he had this huge case of burned movies,
Uh-huh.
like hundreds in there. And so via this thing I got exposed to all these movies that I probably never would have run out to the theater and see before. A lot of these mid 2000s independent weird films that like you said, that like if I had read the synopsis beforehand I never would have saw. But he just had this case, and I would just open his case, yank a movie out, and throw it in and watch it. And this was one of those movies, and I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for him and for his giant stolen movie case, because I really got, like, my love of movies kind of shifted and crystallized into a thing like, oh, I didn't know movies could be this thing as well. Um, and this was one of those movies that I remember fondly for that kind of idea.
Mm.
And I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
There's so much for us to talk about here. There's so much that I think this movie does well, and how it manages to do this thing, which I think is on the surface really difficult to do, right? This is a movie about a very unwell person who orders a sex doll off the internet and falls in love with it, and then the entire town goes along with his delusion to hopefully eventually cure him of it. And if you fuck that up even a little bit,
Yeah.
even a little bit, it just completely falls apart. And the fact that they didn't is remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of those rare movies where I feel a kind of anxiety at the idea of trying to analyze and break it down, because it's the kind of thing where, like, if I could ever write something this good, I would, like, I'd be done. I'd be like, yeah, I've achieved all that I was put on this earth to do. This is my masterpiece, my Mona Lisa, and I can die now. But that's the esteem that I hold this movie in, just in general. The layers, the complexity of each of the characters. You've got so many of these characters who are, that it's like they're simple while being fully fleshed out and realized.
Yeah.
You gotta, so like, it's that rare combination of just a really brilliant script, just brilliantly done, and then every single performance is just everyone's doing the best performance of their life, and bringing, I think, a lot of depth to each of these characters. Not that it's not in the script, but like you need the actor to pull it out of the script to really sell that and have it work. Obviously, it almost like goes without saying, but like Ryan Gosling, I don't know if he, I don't know in what order he did things, but this was definitely one of those movies that makes you realize, like, he's just an incredibly talented actor. And he's often asked to play very stoic roles or like pretty boy roles, but this is like, he's kind of intentionally schlubby. His hair is always messed up, and it's just purely his skills on display.
Yeah, this is post Notebook, but pre-Drive. Drive was, I think, 2010 or 2011. But yeah, I mean, I think this is like the first time that I was like, oh, I have to pay attention to this guy. And I think Ryan Gosling is at his best when he's funny. I think we saw that this summer wonderfully with Barbie, but also the Nice Guys is like one of my favorite Ryan Gosling performances. And the thing I love about this performance is that it combines the kind of the stoicism that I think Gosling does so well with the comedy, because this is actually a really funny movie too. On top of being incredibly touching and beautiful, it's really funny in this really kind of fascinating muted way where I don't know if I ever like laughed out loud, but I was just like constantly delighted by the humor throughout. And he nails it. He nails all of that stuff. Like, he's got such great comedic timing, and all his comedy has to almost not be dialogue.
Yeah.
because it has to be his reactions. It has to be, how he does stuff. Like, I don't know, the sequence where the one woman gives him a flower out of the bouquet she's taking to the hospital, and says, "Give it to a girl," and then Margot walks up to him and he just like chucks it
Yeah.
as hard as he can. Like, just great stuff. Great
Yeah.
stuff.
It's this wonderfully understated situational humor
Hmm.
where like like that moment is a great moment to bring out because it's like obvious, like it's not funny for anybody in the scene, right? It's like he what's actually happening with him is that he's terrified of like being vulnerable, especially with women, because he just has no confidence, but just
Yeah.
in general, just like has this terrible, soul eroding lack of confidence and lack of feeling of belonging, and he's just this sad, extremely lonely person, and there's all these things going on with him where he's he wasn't, I don't know if abused is the right word exactly, but like he just lived this terribly sad upbringing that has caused
Yeah.
him to just have no real feeling of belonging.
Yeah, I mean, his mom dies in childbirth
Yeah,
of
yeah,
him, right?
yeah,
Which is an incredible burden to put on a child.
yeah,
His father never fully recovered from that, and not only like kind of isolated himself, as we saw. Like, I think Gosling, the line he says, his dad was like that too, except
yeah,
dad never wanted to be around anyone, is what he said. So he was. So you get the idea that Gosling was alone the entire time. You maybe even get the idea. I don't think this is said explicitly, but that his father blamed him a little bit because it's like she died giving birth to you, so it's your fault. And he's clearly like wrapped up in this. Like, the blanket that his mother knitted for him, like to be a baby blanket, is something he still carries around with him constantly. It's what we
mhm,
meet him in. It's draped around his neck,
yeah,
and like he's still, yeah, incredibly destroyed and distraught by all this,
yeah,
and has a hard time trusting people, has a hard time, and then like the lack of physical touch, the like
yeah,
all that stuff. Oh,
yeah,
incredibly sad character.
yeah. And I think it's really brilliant how the movie plays out the information that it gives us because you know I don't think we learn definitively that his mother died in childbirth until like halfway through the movie. Like I know we know she's dead, but the fact that
Yeah.
she died in childbirth, and I remember like it's funny because I guess I hadn't seen this movie in a long time. Like it was long enough for me to forget certain details, but like you realize like oh like that's why he's been treating his sister-in-law so weirdly
Yeah.
is because like it's not that he doesn't like her. It's like he actually thinks she's great. Um, he's just like terrified of the idea of somebody being pregnant because it means they could die because it's so
Yeah.
dangerous. Is what he
Mhm.
says. Um, and that like there's just so many of these little things where it makes things make sense in retrospect, and
Yeah.
it explains things, and then you're just it increase. Like every time you learn one of these things, you're like, oh, that's like a knife to the heart. It's just such
Yeah.
clever writing and it's so effective. And yeah, like you said, like I was trying to work my way around to saying like, and yet all of this somehow manages to be funny,
Yeah.
which sounds impossible, but like that's how they manage to make it like feel good, because like
Yeah.
you walk away from this movie feeling so like happy, and it's
Mhm.
and often you're like smiling even though really you're like 5 seconds later you're tearing up. It's really a
Yeah.
miracle.
Well, it's because of the sheer sincerity that permeates every square inch of this film.
Hmm.
Just this idea that like we're going to construct this thing where this broken person invents this delusion, and the town just goes along with it. And it does mine comedy from people's reaction to Lars and to the doll. Um, but it is never in a way that like making fun of him specifically. It's just their reaction to it, and then you see the kind of joy that the people decide to like carry on this delusion with. Like, everyone's into it. There's not a single person that doesn't kind of go along with it. And that is just so, it's so like reassuring and beautiful about like the capability of people, the kindness of people, to
Mhm.
look at this person, this part of their community that is clearly going through something, and just being like, oh, the thing to do here is just embrace him and his weirdness, and just be there. Like, I think one of the most touching lines, one of the reasons I cried is Bianca is dying, and I think Lars comes downstairs and the three elderly women are just sitting there on the couch knitting, and and he's like, "What are you doing?" And they're just like, "Well, we're sitting." And that's what you do. That's what people do when tragedy strikes. They come over and they sit. That's what they do.
Mhm.
And it's just this incredibly beautiful picture of humanity, and the kindest part of humanity, that like the town just embraces this thing. That just fully embraces it and just go with it. And we even start, you know, booking like Bianca gets a job
Yeah.
and volunteers for at the hospital and gets elected to the school
Yeah.
board.
Yeah.
Um, all these things where there people just embrace it so thoroughly, and are so committed and sincere to the idea that they're booking up her schedule.
Yeah.
And man, it's just beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and it's to me the funniest part about all that is that they're not even doing this intentionally, but by booking up her schedule, they start to like annoy um Ryan Gosling's character because he's like, this is supposed to be like my thing,
Hmm.
and it's like it's making it kind of not, it makes it uncomfortable for him in a way that ends up causing him to um grow beyond it, actually.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it's really really smart how they put that together, and the drama of his inner life and how he's externalizing his feelings and thoughts into
yeah.
his relationship with the doll. It's just so great. um
Yeah, it's really interesting because the Wikipedia entry, I read the plot summary, um, after I watched the movie, just to see what they wrote about, and I thought it was really interesting that this summary says, however, in order to reduce Lara's dependency on her, they start filling her schedule with social events and volunteer programs, and that summary like implies a kind of formal strategy around it, which I don't know if I agree was like part of the townspeople's like overall goal, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm
I
not
think,
sure. I'm not sure if they were doing it for that specific reason of like, oh, we have to reduce his dependency on this doll, so let's take it away with us. I think they just saw that as an extension of, we're treating this as if it's a real girl, and
yeah.
therefore going to do everything that a real girl would do.
No, I think they just got excited about it.
Yeah,
I think at most maybe the psychologist character was nudging things in that direction, but
sure, sure.
it's not like everyone was part of this master plan. I
Yeah, but
think
we
they were
never see
having
that scene, right? Do we? I
yeah,
mean, like, where she, hey, maybe it'd be a good idea if we like book her
no.
and to
Yeah.
pull him away from her, blah blah blah. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean everybody started having fun with it, and it is an extension of this idea that we want to make him feel loved.
yeah,
And it's like they know that they can't show him that love, but they can show Bianca that love, to sort of externalize it the way he externalizes his feelings onto Bianca.
yeah. Hmm.
It's a sort of, she becomes a vector of transference for everyone's communication because he can't communicate normally, which is smart. Um, yeah, like I keep thinking about this one moment where, okay, so I wanted to talk about the brother character a bit,
Yeah,
because there's almost an argument that he's something like the protagonist of the movie. I wouldn't argue it too strenuously, but you know, we we follow him a lot. We follow his
hmm,
struggle to deal with his feelings of guilt, his his feelings of shame to some degree, his obvious love for his brother and feelings of responsibility paired against like a sometimes a tendency to be like, we're rejection of that responsibility. And it's just a very realistic, poignant ride through these events. And it's great because a lot of the comedy comes at his expense, but also I would say like maybe half of the pathos comes at his expense. Like I keep thinking about this one moment that's like the hinge of it, where him and his wife are bathing Bianca in the tub,
Mhm.
and like Bianca like falls over and his wife is laughing because she's just the kind of person who's going to take all this in stride, and she doesn't have this baggage that he has, and basically, she's like, oh, this is funny, and he, and he goes, is it? And it's like a moment that really like punctures the bubble of the humor, and I thought that was so clever because they're just so aware of this incredibly thin line between, oh, this is a funny thing that's happening to these people, and like it's really not actually, like it's kind of sad what's happening actually.
Yeah.
And but the movie is so deft moment to moment, like not just at the like the most microscopic level of storytelling, in flipping you back and forth between like, oh, this is uncomfortable, and this is funny. And it's, I say that as someone who normally hates cringe stuff. I hate cringe stuff. I can't
Mhm.
stand it. I can barely watch The Office. Um and this is a film that, like, it sounds incredibly cringe when you hear the description of like what the plot's going to be,
Sure.
but it manages it right. There's very few moments in this movie that actually kind of make me have to pause and walk around the
Yeah.
room shaking my hands.
Well,
um,
it's this amazing thing where I think at some point maybe you forget that this is a sex doll,
yeah,
and the movie spends so long kind of just embracing the fact that Bianca is real, that like, on some level that she's not, but you also kind of just start buying into it. It's like the movie is asking you to suspend your disbelief that this is just to him it is real, and therefore we must treat it as real, and you just go along with it. Like, I think it's honestly pretty unrealistic to assume that like a town would bend over backwards this much for this kind of thing. Um, but like, you just buy into it, and
yeah,
you're just on board. And once you're on board, you're just along for the ride. And so it navigates this very tight rope perfectly. I love the Gus character. The name of I made fun of Paul Schneider because of his just not well developed character on Parks and Rec. Just not good. That was the first season of the show, when the show was still trying to find itself, and he was just wrong for the show that they were ended up wanting to make there. So it makes sense that they got him off. But yeah, he's great in this movie. He's fantastic. And you're so right that the talking about the way that the movie kind of parcels out information, because he seems very detached and very uninterested in his brother. Like, it's Emily Mortimer, and her whole thing is she's the one driving, trying to connect with him, that like constantly inviting him over to eat, worried about him, pushing her brother, like, just she's the one that's driving this whole thing, and he's completely indifferent and unattached. And even when he does come over for dinner and they have like a 5-second conversation, and Ryan Gosling's just like, I'm fine. It's like, yeah, see, that's what I knew that. I knew that. And you realize that, like, over the course of the movie, and it doesn't really ever come out and say this, but like the reason why is because he harbors this incredible guilt, right? That
yeah,
he took off, he left. He couldn't handle his father, and he left Lars there with his dad alone. And he feels guilty for that, and so he needs Lars to be okay, because if Lars is not okay, that means it's his fault. And that is kind of driving everything, and that is why the discovery of Bianca, he's the one that kind of has the hardest time with it at first, and is, I think, the only one in the entire movie that says, no, Lars, she's not real, she's a doll. The only person that ever says that to him is his brother. And it's because that news is devastating to him, and his coming around on it is beautiful to witness, I think.
yeah, totally agree. Yeah, I mean, I think he's definitely the one who is struggling with this the most. That's why I half seriously suggested he's the protagonist, because he is he has more of an arc than anybody except Lars. I mean, Lars is definitely the protagonist, but
Yeah.
he's the other one with a major arc, where he goes
Hmm.
from you know being in this sort of state of God, uh, uh surrendered, uh, uh, I don't know, depressed acceptance of his brother's failure to launch,
Yeah.
and obvious like pathological loneliness and inability to interact with people, and you know in that state of not really examining it but kind of knowing on some level deep inside that things are not right, and this situation is not sustainable, and then transitioning toward really it culminates really in the scene where he is able to apologize to Lars and be like,
Yeah.
I'm sorry I left you. And it's like, again, it's just such a great way of doing things, because it's like, I feel like in a lesser movie that would have been like this overwrought sort of Hollywood scene, and it
Mhm.
actually Lars is just like, yeah, it's okay, and they just like move on, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, like that it was a huge moment for him, and that it's like a really important story moment for everyone involved, but
Yeah.
it's just played like realistically.
Yeah, yeah. Realistically is the right word for it, because yeah, I mean, I think it is a huge moment for Lars too, because one of Lars' fear is that people don't like him. People are going to leave him. He's alone, and so like his brother, his brother's leaving is part of that, right? Is part of what helped develop that pathology, and his brother saying that and acknowledging that, I think, was huge to him. And
Mhm.
he's not going to say that though. He's not the type of person that's going to be like, "Oh, this really meant a lot to me, bro. Thank you. You really helped me restore my faith in people." No, he's just going to be like, "It's okay. Thank you."
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Well, again, I
that's the
didn't
type of
get the
person he is.
feeling that he held it against his brother that he left,
No.
but I think he knows it was his life is worse because his brother left.
Yeah.
That's probably true. So, um,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And the rest of the town people, I think, are so great too. We get to meet this kind of eclectic cast of characters. Of course, you have Margot, the kind of the central love interest, that loves him from the beginning, which I find just so beautiful. That like he's this kind of weird, quiet, quirky guy at work, and she's just so enamored with him from the very beginning. Um,
Mhm.
and and then you have the older woman, I think the church woman that
Mhm.
like is the one that chastises him about the way he's treating Bianca,
Mhm.
which is just great. um
I don't like his tone.
yeah. And like she says that like Lars isn't around,
Yeah.
right? Like this is they're so committed to this. Like there's never like the closest we get to that is when they're washing the doll, like you said, and like kind of laugh at the absurdity of the situation. But they're still like doing it, and like they're still taking it seriously
Yeah.
even when Lars is not around.
Well,
And
yeah. Well, that particular moment I think is great, because it's like, regardless of whether you think Bianca is real, you know that Lars does,
yeah,
and to be listening in on him yelling at his girlfriend, it's like, well, this is an upsetting revelation about
yeah,
Lars,
yeah,
regardless
uh-huh,
of whether Bianca is a real person, right? Um, and that's like the genius of the premise. Is so much of the movie is like this, like, uh, she's like this emotional conduit for all these characters.
yeah, hmm,
It's just such a like I just it's a concept I never would have thought of in a million years, and they just
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's so wild to me. Like this was basically, I think I read the creation of this movie was the writer like heard about an article about like weird things you can buy online, and one of them was this real doll. I think the website they used for this movie, realdolls.com, was a real website. I think I think they bought the doll from that website. That's the doll they used. It cost $6,000, by the way.
uh-huh,
um and like the idea to me that someone said, "Oh, that's really interesting. I should write a movie about that." And this is what you come up with. Like this
uh-huh,
is the movie. A lonely man buys a sex doll on the internet, and like this is what you make it, is endlessly fascinating to me, because like he doesn't have sex with the doll ever,
yeah.
right? Like in fact, I saw in the trivia that like said something to the effect of, in order to ensure that there was no connotation ever that he would have sex with the doll they ordered did not have any sexual parts. And I'm like, well, we don't see that though.
Yeah. In fact, the movie is clear that it does,
Yeah. Yeah.
which I think makes sense, because there's this whole idea of pregnancy being something incredibly important to to his character, and yet Bianca can't have children, and so it makes more sense. I don't know. I thought it made sense. I
Yeah.
like I was. It's funny. I mean, for a movie about a sex doll, as I was watching it, I was like, I could probably show this to my kids,
Hmm.
other than having to explain what a sex doll is,
Yeah.
which is a disturbing concept for children of my children. It's like literally everything else about the movie, other than like the sheer fact that it's a sex doll, is like aggressively very like that's the cutest thing about it, is that Lars is this very polite, um, proper young man
Yeah.
who, he just wants to take Bianca on dates into the forest and show and let him watch her chop wood, let her watch him chop wood, and sing, and
Yeah.
just be silly and earnest. That's like why it works. Like if there were any like any tinge of like sexual weirdness to it, it would kind of change the complexion of the whole movie, actually.
And that's one of those things where again I'm like, "Oh my god, they threaded this needle," because you're right. If they had at any point done a thing where like, "Oh, well, obviously he's very religious. He's made her very religious too, and that's why they can't stay in the same bed. And he's got excuses and reasons for everything. But oh, the relationship escalating, and now we're gonna consummate the relationship. It changes everything
Yeah,
immediately. It becomes a sex doll again. It
yeah,
stops being Bianca, and it becomes a sex doll again. And that the fact that they knew that and had that foresight to be like, no, we need to not do this. We need to stay away from this. In fact, we're gonna like make efforts to make it clear that they never consummated this relationship. And the fact that I think the only time Gosling kisses the doll is the very last moment, right when she's about to quote unquote die,
yeah,
is really the first kiss we've ever seen. And
yeah.
so yeah, it makes it not about the doll and the sex doll part of
Yeah.
the doll. That's really just the conceit that makes it kind of funny. But yeah,
And he's like sobbing when he kisses the doll. Like that's the
yeah,
God. Like I know I keep basically repeating different versions of the same sentiment, but it's like you at some point in the movie he's probably gonna kiss the doll,
hmm,
and you're like, well, that's gonna be like cringe when that happens,
yeah,
because that's a cringe thing to happen. And it's like, no, he's totally heartbroken, and he's just weeping, and that's when he kisses her, and like you're crying. It's
yeah,
like,
yeah,
God, yeah. It's like, it's funny. It's like it's like the thing with Tom Hanks and Wilson, right? Where in Castaway, where it's like, you're not crying because the volleyball is dead. You're crying because Tom Hanks is emotionally shattered.
yeah.
You're empathizing with that character. You're empathizing with Lars in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible kind of test of human empathy, the just like the way we can we can just extend empathy like this
Yeah,
just immediately, even though we know it's an absurd situation that he is creating, right? Like that's the wild thing about Bianca's death is that like he is doing this, he's creating this, he's deciding this because he's ready to move on from her, and he doesn't know how to do that himself, and so he's manufacturing an external reason to do so.
yeah,
Um, and it doesn't stop the moment from being beautiful and impactful. And I did cry when
yeah.
he's crying for her. I
And I
did.
don't. I mean that. I don't think he's just mourning Bianca either. I think he's
No,
mourning like his whole screwed up life.
and
That
his mother, like
and
like
yeah,
it, that's the interesting thing about Bianca is it's definitely like a romantic relationship, quote unquote, with him. But I mean, he never had a mother, right? Like
yeah,
he never had a mother, and so there is part of it that's that too. I think.
yeah,
And it is allowing him, like by having her die, he is allowing him to say goodbye to the mother that he never got to say goodbye to because she was gone by the time he could, like the first time he could remember stuff. She's been never been there.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. I think there's so much complexity wrapped up into this idea of Bianca being there in the first place, and then Bianca, quote unquote, dying, is him processing and really kind of getting a catharsis from all of the baggage he's been carrying around for his whole life, and
Mhm.
getting himself to a point where he can contemplate dating, a woman who he obviously
Mhm.
likes and has, obviously liked the entire movie.
Yeah.
Um, that's some of the funniest stuff is like his little quiet, Ryan Gosling reactions when he sees that she's dating someone now, and he's just kind of like staring from the other
Yeah.
room. It's
Just
it's all great.
goes and gets his Cracker Jacks and sits down in a chair and just watching them while eating. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the sequence between them, the man, there's so many good parts in this, but the bowling sequence I think is so great because like you're seeing him and like he's still kind of his awkward self, like everyone's high-fiving and he's not participating in any of that and he's still not touching anyone, not doing any of that.
Yeah.
But he's interacting with these people and okay with it. He's not running away from it. He's there. He's involved. He's really bad at bowling.
Yeah.
um, but he's like it's just it's a beautiful, beautiful sequence.
Mhm.
And he doesn't like I love the ways in which he does it. Like this is a movie that doesn't really spell things out for you, but like he doesn't know how to handle that. He doesn't know how to handle those feelings, and he doesn't change all at once. He doesn't transform all at once. It's a slow kind of slow roll. I think it's the moment after the bowling night that Bianca is unconscious, right? Like
Yeah.
he goes through that thing and then decides subconsciously that he needs to start transitioning away from her.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one really interesting thing is you're watching him during this bowling scene, and there's a lot of the movie that's just kind of showing him um sitting there having emotions on his face, and
Yeah.
it's interesting to consider what he's going through there, because I really like it's a full-blown delusion. At least the movie has convinced me that it is, where he's not thinking like, oh, I need to somehow find a way to get rid of Bianca. It's like he's just realizing like this is what his life can be like,
Mhm.
and the subconscious gears are turning and realizing like, okay, well, in order for my life to be like this, the delusion is going to have to be sunsetted.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all really interesting to kind of consider as you're watching.
Yeah, well, I mean, one of the things he liked about Bianca at the beginning is like it's the perfect girl for a guy like him, right?
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about touch. You don't have to worry about intimacy, things he really wasn't prepared to deal with.
Yeah.
She will never leave you. Like I think it's that beautiful line, right, where he's talking about the fake flowers.
Yeah.
To Bianca. I think someone gives her flowers and they're fake, and he says they're not real, so they'll last forever. Isn't that neat? And
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
there it is. There it is.
I found that to be a surprisingly poignant, like it's just in the middle of a scene that's otherwise
Mhm.
not overly dramatic, but it just slapped me in the face with it's like, oh my God, like you realize like, yeah, well, he's a guy who lost his mother or never had a mother,
Yeah.
and his father, I mean, his father died too. That's the thing we
Yep.
haven't really talked about, but like he only had a father, and then his father has now died, and he's still a relatively young man, so he's just, he's got his brother, but he's just this guy who's just kind of incredibly traumatized, I guess, by the losses he's experienced. And so
Mhm.
just something safe, right? Like Bianca is safe. Bianca is non-threatening in all the ways that he needs.
Yeah. But then also ultimately not satisfying, right? Like
Mhm.
that's the struggle I think of his relationship with her is that as she becomes less and less the exact model of a person that he wants to be and more a model of an actual person, she becomes less and less fulfilling to him.
Mhm.
And thus she needs to be removed. And
Yeah.
I don't know, that's I think it's absolutely beautiful. It's tragic. There's there's a part of me, Matt, that can't help but like not turn my brain off at this movie where I'm like, when Bianca's not conscious and they call an ambulance to her, I'm like, that's like $20,000. Like
Uh-huh.
is are they just covering the ambulance? Like who's paying that bill? And then, her whole funeral, we see she's got a grave plot. She's got a coffin. Um are we are we who's paying for that stuff?
Uh-huh. Well, I mean, of course, on some level, you're right. But like, I actually, when you asked that question, I'm like, I suspended my disbelief to the level that the town is just going to take care of this
Yeah.
as an expression of love for, partially as an expression of love for Lars, and partially weirdly as an expression of love for Bianca, because I think she kind of became real to everyone, and she became something like a mascot or a, I don't know, a celebrity. Um,
Yeah, it's this is you're so right. This is a really interesting point because, like, obviously, like we saw almost immediately the way in which Bianca opened up Lars, right? Like, we have the two differences. We have the dinner he had with his brother and brother's wife without Bianca, and then the dinner he has with them with Bianca, and you can automatically see the difference in him, that like just having this person like is opening him up and changing him.
yeah.
Like that's happening right away. But yeah, I think there is this idea to the fact that it is doing something for the town as well. Like this is a town, it's, I think this was shot in like Wisconsin or something. It's really really cold. It's really dreary. Um, it's not that the whole town seems unhappy, but they don't seem like super happy either.
Mhm.
And it is I think something for everyone. Everyone gets something out of this. Everyone finds like a love of life again, through kind of playing this game.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. So the the ambulance probably got covered on Lars's insurance is the actual answer to your question. I love the moment where the wife calls the ambulance, and, and the brother's like, an ambulance. Yeah. Okay.
I think what she says, like, he's like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I don't know. Why do I have to think of everything?"
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Gosh.
gosh. Yeah. No, and I mean, like, I think there's something to what you were talking about too, because at the funeral, like, everyone's sad. Like
Yeah.
Margot's sad. Like
Yeah.
these people are sad, and it's because you pretend something's real for long enough, and they become real. That's how our brains work.
Yeah.
And um, I don't know. It's I find it absolutely beautiful that like everyone shows up for it. Everyone is sad about it. Everyone is committed to it. And they're all kind of sad to see her go, but also just like so happy for him, right? Because
Yeah.
again, this is like the end of their whole, if you want to assign a plan to it, their whole plan is it's achieving its fruition here.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. This they're all collectively grieving something. Some of that is Bianca. Some of that is this shared, game they were all playing, as you said,
Mhm.
and some of it is sort of on behalf of Lars because they know he's hurting, and so they're hurting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's
We
I just wanted to kind of rewind a second because we were talking about like the way she brings him out of his shell, and I think that's part of the dynamics of that I thought was really clever is like when he takes her to the party, the first time he takes her to like a work party, and he's still like, this is obviously so far outside his comfort zone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's like really pushing himself to do this, like he's kind of barely keeping it together, but as the evening goes on, he's able to handle it and to kind of be okay and have a good time. And then and then afterward he's driving home with Bianca. Is one of the really few times we see him and her alone, and he's like crying, and he's like, it's okay, I'm just so happy. And it's like you
Yeah.
realize that she's given him this doorway to do the things that he's always wanted to do, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
He's
yeah,
desperately wanted this. He's desperately wanted this his entire life. He just didn't know how to ask for it or
yeah,
get it. And you're right. This is kind of the catalyst that forces him. I love, there's that moment right as he rings the doorbell, right? Where
hmm,
like he's standing there in front of the door, and like any other moment in Lars' life, any other moment, he says, "No, I can't do this," and turns around and walks away. But he can't do that because she's there. Um, and this idea that like he can, like, I love what you said about having her be like a conduit for his emotions, because he can put the fear that he's feeling about this moment, the fear and the nervousness and the anxiety, and he can put it onto her,
yeah,
and then he can comfort her. and thusly allowing himself to comfort himself, right?
Yeah.
This is this really fascinating thing, and it's a thing that like I think we do very instinctually. Like my son literally does this, Matt.
Yeah.
He has this kind of life size for a 2-year-old Spider-Man stuffed animal,
Uh-huh.
and um, the other day I was putting him to bed, and I was about to turn on the sound machine, and he goes, "It's okay, Spider-Man. It's about to be loud. Get ready." And then he goes, "It's gonna get dark. Don't worry." And it's like that's what he's doing, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
he was a little anxious about those things. He was a little worried about them, and he's putting that anxiety onto the Spider-Man and then calming Spider-Man down, thusly calming himself down. And I'm like, holy shit, that's this incredible thing. And here it is in this movie. That's what's happening here.
Mhm.
It's so good.
Yeah. And then as the movie goes on, he actually grows. Like that's one
Yeah.
of the delightful things about it is he grows slowly and subtly, but he does grow to the point where he doesn't actually need her anymore. And that's we talked about the bowling scene. That's what that is. He goes
Yeah.
bowling. It's basically a date, although it's not called that. And then hanging out with people, having a great time,
Hmm.
and realizing like consciously, subconsciously, whatever, realizing he doesn't even need Bianca to be here. She's busy. She's at the school board meeting. Um,
Yeah.
and that's a huge turning point, obviously.
You're absolutely right, because any other moment, like that's his built-in excuse, right? And we saw he's a guy that loves excuses. Well, like I have this, I brought work home, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
He's got this excuse. Oh, I have to drop Bianca off at the school board meeting. But then he says, after I drop her off, I'm free for the rest of the night. And you're just like, oh, holy shit! Like the
Yeah.
fact that you said that is so huge for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. Oh yeah. That is speaking of just moments that I loved where she has the doll. I think I'm thinking of this because you mentioned your son's doll.
Hmm.
But like she has the doll, and his office mate has the little action figures, so we're kind
Hmm.
of doing something really cute here with the idea that like, well, kind of everybody has their little dolls and toys that they used to externalize and to kind of project onto safe objects,
Yeah.
right? And he hangs her doll, and she cries, and it's like she's not really crying about the doll, she's crying about the breakup she's going through, but the
Yep.
doll acts as a you know trigger for this. And then Ryan Gosling, Lars, quietly resuscitates the doll and gives it back to her, and it's just such a beautiful little moment where,
Hmm.
again, probably not the kind of thing he would have done at the beginning of the movie,
Yep. Yep.
but it's just
But
very beautiful. Yeah.
by the way, Ryan Gosling giving CPR to that teddy bear,
Uh-huh.
improvised, not in the
Oh,
script.
that's I can't imagine it without that, but that's so good. Yeah.
It is great, right? It's
Yeah.
like a perfect moment of him demonstrating that he understands the character perfectly. Because
Yeah.
it's great. No, and I think you're absolutely right there. That's the action figures and the teddy bear. Like the movie is consciously doing that to contrast with what Gosling is doing, and maybe showing that, is this so ridiculous? Like, I mean, certainly yes, but we all do this to a certain extent.
Exactly. Yep.
I do want to talk about the doctor character a little bit. We kind of talked around her, but that's Patricia Clarkson playing the doctor. I think like just once again, beautiful performance work and just very sharp writing. Like we get to kind of observe how she's navigating him to get him to open up and get like I just like that's one part of the movie I just really enjoyed, is like watching her not manipulate but just like navigate him to discover what's going on with him.
Yeah.
And the moment where he says, you know like he starts talking about Karen, about Emily Mortimer's character, and says, she says she's okay, but I'm really worried about her. and
Hmm.
and you could almost see Patricia Clarkson go like, oh shit, I've got him. She can't like make that. She's just like, oh really? Okay, talk about
Hmm.
that. What do you mean? And it's just like that's fun stuff. I think that when
Yeah.
you talk about how the script is like really sharp and really well done, that's really fun stuff to just observe. It really it's a very dynamic scene because you're watching her kind of explore and navigate his delusion in a way that doesn't push him, that doesn't pull him out of his comfort zone, but allows him to open up a little bit.
Yeah.
Just Great stuff.
Yeah, the funniest thing about that is somewhere in there she's like, "Oh, maybe you shouldn't tell me." And
Yeah.
it's like she's but like she knows exactly that he wants to get this off his chest. And
Yeah.
um yeah, no, I love that character. I love all of those scenes. Those are some of the most fun in the whole movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great stuff.
I also will always love like an Oscar-esque yelling scene, and I think Emily Mortimer outside with him chopping wood, talking about how no one cares about him,
Mhm.
and her just like losing it and going off on him is like one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie.
Yeah.
Like, we're doing all of this for you because we love you. Like, it's just how was nobody nominated for a fucking Academy Award for this movie, Matt? I'm so mad.
Yeah, was no one really? Okay.
The script got nominated for original screenplay, and that's it, Academy wise.
Um, it received a nomination. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, he got a Golden Globe nomination.
Mm-hmm.
Gosling did,
Mm-hmm.
which obviously, yeah. Wow, I that is stupid.
It is stupid. I mean, I just like everyone is doing like grade A work in here. Like, it doesn't even bother me that Emily Mortimer doesn't have her British accent in this movie.
Yeah,
She does a fine American accent, but I love her British accent. It doesn't even bother me because she's doing such good work here. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't really have any critique of this movie, really. Like, I don't
mhm,
have anything that I'm like, oh, I wish the movie had done this. Like, there's nothing for this movie for me.
yeah,
I think it works all the way down. Um,
yeah.
every bit of it.
I guess like this isn't a critique. It's just like um sometimes I think like could the movie would it have been improved if we had seen more toward the beginning of the movie showing that like the townspeople really love Lars. But
Hmm.
no, it's like no, it does do that actually. So it's not really.
Yeah.
It's just this issue where I'm like, on some level, I'm like, but why did they try so hard for on his behalf? And I think it's like it's because you're a cynical old man who can't accept that people would just reach out to this person who obviously needs help out of the kindness of their hearts,
Yeah.
which is obviously the point. And also, yeah, like people do like him, and he is like a sweet guy. He just has obvious problems.
Yeah, one of the things I really love about how they draw this character in the early movie is that he is this incredibly compassionate, kind person. Like the introductory scene where he's talking with Emily Mortimer's character, and she's trying to get him to come over for dinner. It's this perfect, really defining line for his character because he's talking to her through the glass door. He doesn't want to
Mhm.
open the door. He doesn't want to touch her. He wants to be distanced from her. But then he sees she's cold. And what does he do? He opens the door and he gives her his blanket. Not just his blanket, but as we learn later, the one thing he has from his mother. The
Yeah,
one thing. He sees she's cold and gives it to her. And that is Lars. That is his kindness. That is his compassion. We see that again when he goes to church. He sees the woman struggling with the flowers. And despite his social awkwardness, despite his uncomfort around people, what does he do? He walks up to her and says, "Do you need help with that?" And he takes it and helps her. Like, this is who he is. And I think it's very easy to extrapolate out that like that's who he behaves to everyone. Everyone knows him as this person who is isolated and quiet, and we never see him. But every time we do see him, he is kind, he is compassionate, and he helps people.
yeah,
And so it makes perfect sense to me that when he needs help, when they see he needs help, everyone's just like, okay, let's do it. Let's go.
yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I was kicking the idea around that I was like, could there have been more of it though? And it's like, no, it's like the perfect amount, and it's really well paced. There's not like a slow part to this movie. I do feel
No.
like movies of this general type tend to have that like flagging, second act, and just not an issue here at all.
Yeah, there's a kind of movie that, I mean, this is, we were talking about my nostalgia for this movie specifically, and for my introduction to the kind of indie scene of the mid to late 2000s. Um, there's like a kind of a bunch of these movies got made that I think they're called like mumblecore,
Uh huh.
which are like the super low budget supposed to be very naturalistic dialogue indie film. And those can and do get like really obnoxious.
Yeah.
In like kind of aping a style maybe a little bit like this movie, like where it's kind of dreary and melancholy
Realistic.
but realistic. Yeah. um
Well, and that's the thing. This movie is not realistic. Like the performances are realistic, but the premise and the actions are highly dramatic and, you know, intended to create a good plot line, actually, which is good, right? Like
yeah. Mhm.
you don't want the realistic version of this movie where he just lives in his house with the sex doll for the rest of his life. um you want the version where the scriptwriter has the stroke of genius that he decides that Bianca's dying because he wants to be free of this now.
Yeah.
Which again is like it's an amazing like twist, right? And
Yeah.
you're reacting the way all the characters are reacting with like, oh no, she's what do you mean Bianca's dying? Um,
No, she's not.
yeah. Are you sure?
Yeah, I love Gus's reaction to she's unconscious, she's not waking up, and he's like, she looks okay to me, buddy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you've got a great point there, and all that is predicated by I asked her to marry me, and she said no, which is perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep.
I don't know, man. I don't know what else to say other than this is one of my favorite movies of all time. I think it's rocketed up there for me. I adore and treasure my time with this movie.
Me too.
I had fond memories of it when I saw it, but I was not expecting how much I was going to love this rewatch, and I was like completely enamored by this movie.
Yeah, I guess I did remember that I love this movie, but watching it with sort of the intent of talking about it, of course, is always a different experience. And I just noticed so many little things. And
Oh yeah,
I'm not surprised that we've talked for, I think longer than we usually do when we talk about a single movie because there's so much. And, as soon as we stop this, I'm probably going to think of 6 more things just because it's just one of those few perfect things in the world,
Yeah. Ryan Gosling, man, maybe my favorite actor right now. I don't know. I change all the time, but man,
I think he's been my favorite for a long time, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And it's really interesting because he does Drive in I think 2011, and I think that is a pretty big hit for him relative. And I think he gets kind of typecast as that character for a while, right? That he is this kind of stoic, non-reactionary person, but that's not Gosling at all. Who Gosling is the scene in this movie where he's sitting there in the tree fort singing his head off.
Yeah.
And like that's him. That's who he is, and that's when he's at his best. That's why he's so fucking good in Barbie, because that is like pure distilled Ryan Gosling right there.
Right. That's that's why he's my favorite. Is he can be Agent K or whatever his name is, Replicant K, and then he can be Ken, and it's like both great performances. No criticism. He's been in so many good things.
Yes. I will once again remind people that if they have not seen Shane Black's The Nice Guys, you just have to see that movie, which is the perfect Ryan Gosling doing comedy, and also Russell Crowe really embracing his character actor, the true nature of his character actor self. God, I need to go watch that again. I love that movie so much.
Yeah, me too.
But that is Lars and the Real Girl. Let's get to the vote now, Matt. I think no surprise here. I'm gonna say yes, absolutely. Not only yes, but if we were like tier ranking the movies that I think should be in the canon, I would put this in the S tier for sure.
Yeah. I want people to watch this movie, right? Like that's the whole point, or at least that's my personal definition of what the whole canon is about. And it's like, people should watch this movie for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it is a movie that I think I think it did okay when it came out. It was well received. It got that one Academy Award nomination. And I think it's become like I don't want to call it like a cult hit, like classic, because I don't think enough people have seen it for that to be really true, but like everyone that's watched this movie just loves it. And so I would love if more people checked this one out, because I think think you're gonna have a really good time with it.
Yeah, me too.
And you're gonna cry.
Yeah, and you're gonna laugh.
Yeah. Here's one thing that I don't think you should do. I don't think you should roll out of this movie and then boot up Disney Plus and watch the television show Ahsoka, because I think you will find the difference in quality extremely jarring.
A little bit of whiplash there, a little bit of
Yeah.
Disney whiplash.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think I'm gonna watch Ahsoka, maybe unless somebody else tells me it's good, because not hearing good things so far.
I honestly was debating whether or not I wanted to talk about it on the show, and I just kind of said that other than my gentle jab at it there, I don't really want to, because I don't want to be that person that just endlessly bitches about Star Wars TV
Yeah.
shows. But it's not for me. Definitely not for me.
All right.
We do have another thing we did want to talk about before we went for the. I'm sorry. Did you say yes on the vote? I don't know if I
Yes,
just
yes.
assumed, and so I didn't actually.
Very much so, yes.
Lock it in. 2 yeses from us. But now, of course, the decision is up to you, folks. If you haven't seen this movie before, if you just listen to us talk about it and you're intrigued, before you vote, go watch the movie. And don't just agree with us for the sake of doing it. Go watch the movie and then vote yes, because you will. I promise.
Yep.
Doof.
Matt, before we go for the week, we did have some brief news to talk about. I don't know how long this conversation is going to go on, but I just wanted to give you an outlet to mourn and to just seek the support of our community. Because it was announced just today that Dune Part 2 is moving from its November 2nd release date to March 2024.
Well, now I know how Paul Muad'Dib felt when his father was killed and his whole world was taken away from him. And then he saw a horrible vision of his future. I know exactly how he felt.
Exactly. It's the same. It's the exact same.
Yep.
This is, of course, a reflection of the ongoing writer and actor strike. My understanding is that while the movie wrapped principal photography, there's still a lot of post-production stuff they were working on, some of which includes ADR, which you need actors for that. So they can't do any of those. And that's only one of the things I heard that they still have to do. So
okay. See, I was going to say, just don't do the ADR. Just we don't need it. Just be a silent film.
Yeah. You know who doesn't do ADR?
Who?
Christopher Nolan.
Yeah, that's just
it all makes sense.
No, it's funny when you said it was being delayed by the ADR, because while I absolutely adore Villeneuve as a director, the one thing I wish he would stop doing is having ADR lines to explain stuff that the movie doesn't think that maybe some people were smart enough to catch. I don't think that's necessary, and he does it kind of a lot.
Tell the suits, I'm sure it's not his decision.
It happens often enough that I wonder if it is his decision, but you're probably right. Anyway,
who knows? But Dune not happening. Writer strike not coming to an end. Actor strike still going on. Who knows? I think we're at the point now, Matt, where like even if like tomorrow the Writers Guild and the studios announce that they've reached a deal, like the amount of time it's going to take to iron that deal out, to get everything into place, and to like start spinning up production again is probably going to lead us until like the very end of the fourth quarter, like December timeframe. And so we very well could not see any like movement on like making things again in Hollywood until 2024, which is insane.
I mean, you tell me the moved release date, and I'm like, well, why should we assume that date's going to be good either? If, as you say, there's no end in sight, right? So who knows?
It's kind of sad because I don't know. Like, it doesn't feel to me that Dune Part 2 is a March movie. It feels that Dune Part 2 is a fall movie. Like it just that feel like the November time slot was right. It also didn't have any other stuff around it, so it got access to the IMAX screens for an extended period of time. It just feels like the movie's going to make less money now because of this.
For sure. Well, the whole thing is cursed. It's just totally cursed.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't worry, Matt, because those IMAX screens for Dune Part 2 were immediately snatched up by your most anticipated movie of the fall, uh, The Marvels.
Oh, good.
That one's still going to come out.
Uh-huh.
Aren't you, you
You
really
know,
excited about it?
I mean, I'll take my kids.
Oh, sure.
My
Sure.
daughter likes Captain Marvel, so
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably go see it,
I liked
actually.
Captain Marvel. I liked that movie a hell of a lot more than you did.
Yeah, maybe. I don't, like, hate it. It actually counts for a lot that my daughter likes that movie,
Sure.
because it's like, she's like me, like, that actually works. So, yeah.
Unfortunately, the trailer for this one just doesn't look great at all.
So it's funny. I don't really disagree with you, but, like, I saw a different trailer. I think I actually saw it in front of Oppenheimer,
Okay.
and I was like, "This looks like a totally different movie, and it actually looks like it might be kind of fun."
Interesting.
Now that's the thing is, just because you like just because you can cut a good trailer doesn't mean that the movie's good. Like, I agree. The first trailer, the only trailer that I have been able to find on YouTube, I still think it looks pretty bad. But yeah, the trailer I saw in front of Oppenheimer, or maybe it was Barbie, who knows? It felt very different to me. It felt like a different tone. I don't know if that's actually the tone of the movie, but the trailer was moderately more compelling.
That's encouraging. I certainly want these movies to be good, right? Like I'm being a little snarky here, but like I would love if The Marvels is a great movie, and I suddenly find myself needing to go run out and see it because everyone's talking about how good it is. I would love that to happen.
Yeah.
I don't have high hopes for it.
Yeah.
But who knows, man? Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, like in all seriousness, like, we've talked a bit about the idea that the problem with the MCU currently is the obvious problem is they ended, they started the series with Iron Man, Tony Stark. They ended the series with the heroic sacrifice of Iron Man, Tony Stark, and the loss of Cap. So you've lost all your charismatic leads. You need to replace your charismatic leads and your charismatic characters that people care about. And it's like, it's frustrating to me that you've got Brie Larson, who has some dramatic chops. You've got this, like, interesting concept, like, please make me care about Captain Marvel. I would love that. I want you to make me dramatically invested in Captain Marvel so that we can move into the next cycle with some characters I care about. Because right now, that's just like, I'm just like, God, it's like anything. Give me anything to get invested in here.
Yeah.
Anyway.
No, yeah, I agree. I don't know. I don't know how they're gonna do that. So while you were talking, I was kind of looking at fall 2023 to see like what's coming out now. There's a few things. Obviously, there's the Marvels we were just talking about. There's the new Taika Waititi movie, Next Goal Wins, which is a soccer movie. There's the Ridley Scott's Napoleon, but I don't like. I'm really interested to see how many of these are going to get pushed as well. Like,
Yeah.
are we just going to clear out of the fall and there's going to be nothing?
Yeah. Good point. That's the whole business is going to go under. We're not going to have any movies. It's the end.
It's just wild to me that these sides have not made a deal yet. Like, there's so much money being lost here, and like, just they need to just come together and hash this thing out. And I feel like, I don't know, like, most of the coverage I see is very much in support of the guilds, and so it's very, very negative coverage of the AMPTP, which is unsurprising. I know there's probably like equal coverage that says the writers are being unreasonable, whatever, but it's just like, man, y'all need to just work it out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, perhaps I'm assuming a level of rationality that doesn't exist here, but the reason why two sides refuse to compromise is that both actually think they're going to win.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Which means that the MPTP thinks that the actors are going to fold if they just keep holding out long enough.
Yeah, and maybe they will.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Exactly. Maybe they will. Like at a certain, after a year of not getting any work,
Yeah.
Obviously, the big name actors can just kind of sit and rest on their laurels, but
Yeah.
I think the vast majority of the actual members of that organization cannot. So
One cool thing to see is there was this fund kind of set up to get to like provide money to striking writers and actors. And a lot of the big name actors donated a shit ton of money to that fund.
mhm.
And I think during the course of the strike, that fund has paid out above $40 million
Uh-huh.
to people just, trying to make it, trying to survive during the strike. So that's pretty encouraging. And that's, if you're a studio person, you're like, oh no. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. We will see. I think the negotiations talked again. I think the AMTP PTP finally came back to the Writers Guild with a counteroffer, and it wasn't a good one. Apparently, I think the writers were like shocked, and that basically it was like just so bad of a counter that like it's not even a let's start negotiations and tinker with the numbers counter. It was just like, we're not even ready to take this thing seriously yet counter offer. So I don't know. I mean, it could be over tomorrow. It could go on for another 3 months. We just don't know at this point.
Yeah. Very strange.
Yeah, it is. But there's still some stuff happening. We got the Marvels. We got Ahsoka. We can go watch that.
Great.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to be snarky. There's a lot of people that watch the cartoon Star Wars stuff that I have heard absolutely love that show. So I'll stop talking about it. But
Okay, I haven't even watched it. I'm just being snarky for the sake of comedy.
let me save you some time. Don't. You won't like it. Like, okay. I'm not sure about everything in my life, but that is one thing I'm absolutely sure of.
Okay,
you will not like it.
All right, I won't watch it.
Yeah. All right. I think that is going to be it for us this week. If you have any opinions on Lars and the Real Girl, on Dune's removal, and the continued, mess that is the Hollywood bargaining system, or if you have any feelings on Ahsoka, I would love to hear them too, because I know there's a ton of people out there that really like this show, and as I said, I don't. So let me know why. Why do you like this show? You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on Twitter. X @doofmedia.
That's right. I gotta get it straight.
Gotta get it.
If you're not already subscribed to this Ahsoka fan cast, we ensure you do so and ensure you never miss an episode. You can find us on iTunes, YouTube, Google Play, etc., etc.
And you can find this and all of our other podcasts over at doofmedia.com. And if you like us and want to support us, please head over to patreon.com/doofmedia and pledge at any of the available levels. This will, of course, give you access to a bunch of bonus episodes, give you access to vote for our monthly book clubs, tons of cool stuff. Vote for the movies that appear on this, right? This is how we have our kind of highest level tier patron who nominate films, and then we collect those nominations and we send a vote out to the rest of our patrons who pick which movie they want us to talk about. And that's why we talked about Lars and the Real Girl. So if you want to be part of that decision-making process, you can do that there. And of course, while you're there, you can vote on whether or not Lars should get into the canon or not, because you don't even need to be a patron to do that.
That's right. Also, please consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. Each review helps us get more exposure and introduces new people to the content that we make here.
All right, folks, next week on the show, Matt and I are going to be taking a week off because I will be out of town for a wedding, but that's okay because we've got some special guests coming back to the show. Elliot and Ruben are going to be back to talk about the latest Neil Breen film, that is Cade, the Tortured Crossing. I was supposed to originally be on the show with them, Matt, and then I missed the showing here in Texas. And my understanding, talking with them about their experience watching this movie, I fucked up. So if you know Neil Breen, or if you've seen a Neil Breen film in the past, you probably know about what to expect. But they're going to be here next week to talk all about the newest Breen film, and I can't wait to listen to it. I really can't.
Sounds fun.
So that'll be next week, and then we'll be back the week after that to continue with our blind spotting series. But enjoy Elliot and Ruben, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.